Have you ever wondered why certain ancient symbols seem to resonate with something deep within your soul? Why throughout human history, across vastly different cultures, the same sacred geometries and patterns emerge again and again? What if these symbols aren't merely artistic expressions, but actual keys, vibrational tools designed to protect the human consciousness from unseen influences? Perhaps what we've dismissed as superstition is actually the remnant of a profound spiritual technology, one that the architects of our material reality cannot interfere with or corrupt. The most unsettling truth isn't that we are being influenced, it's that we've forgotten we are being influenced at all. The prison without bars is the most effective prison ever created. We believe ourselves to be free, while our perception remains carefully curated, our spiritual essence subtly redirected into channels that serve forces we cannot see. But what if certain symbols act as circuit breakers in this system? What if they represent frequencies that the controllers of this reality, what the Gnostics called Archons, cannot touch, cannot manipulate, cannot distort? I'm about to share with you an understanding that has been systematically removed from mainstream spiritual teachings. This isn't about fear, it's about remembering a birthright so fundamental that its absence has created the very amnesia we mistake for normal human consciousness. By the end of this journey, you may never look at certain symbols the same way again. More importantly, you may never experience your own consciousness the same way either. The revelation I'm about to share has been preserved in fragments across multiple esoteric traditions. From the sealed chambers of Egyptian temples to the hidden teachings of early Christian Gnostics, from Hermetic manuscripts to Kabbalistic diagrams, this knowledge was deemed too powerful for casual consumption. It was encoded, fragmented, and often deliberately obscured to protect it from those who would destroy it. When the Nag Hammadi library was discovered in 1945, buried in the Egyptian desert for over 1600 years, it revealed texts that had been systematically purged from orthodox teachings. Among these ancient Gnostic writings were descriptions of Archons, inorganic beings that the Gnostics identified as the administrators of our reality, entities that feed on human emotional energy and maintain what they called the prison of forgetfulness. What's remarkable is how these same entities appear across diverse traditions under different names. The Flyers in indigenous Toltec wisdom, the Wetiko in Native American teachings, the Asuras in Vedic texts. Each tradition independently recognized that human consciousness was being interfered with, and each developed symbolic tools to counteract this influence. The most closely guarded secret wasn't just the existence of these influences, but the vibrational keys that could neutralize them. Symbols, whose very geometry creates energetic fields that the Archons cannot penetrate or manipulate. If you're resonating with this information, if something deep within you recognizes this truth, you're experiencing what the Gnostics called anamnesis, the lifting of amnesia, the remembering of what you've always known but were made to forget. This channel exists as a sanctuary for those awakening to these deeper realities. Join us on this journey of remembrance. Subscribe to ensure these revelations continue to reach you. Each video builds upon the last, constructing a map of consciousness that has been deliberately fragmented. Together, we're reassembling the puzzle that was never meant to be solved. At least, not by those who the system was designed to contain. The path we walk together isn't new. It's the most ancient path of all. It's simply been hidden beneath layers of distraction and forgetting. To understand the power of these symbols, we must first understand the cosmology in which they operate. In Gnostic tradition, our visible universe wasn't created by the ultimate divine source, but by a lower entity called the Demiurge, a being who himself emerged from cosmic error and who mistakenly believed himself to be the highest god. This Demiurge, working through his Archons, created the material world as a complex system designed to capture and feed upon the divine light trapped within human beings. This isn't merely ancient mythology. It's a sophisticated metaphysical framework describing the architecture of control that surrounds human consciousness. The Archons aren't necessarily literal beings in physical form, though many traditions describe them as having certain energetic signatures. Rather, they represent forces that operate through patterns, through systems of thought, through emotional reactions, through the very structure of materiality itself. The Gnostic text on the origin of the world describes how these Archons laid plans for each other, and each one created from his own power, according to this figure. But their powers began at the bottom and went up to the top in this way. They were all joined to each other until the seventh reached the top. This describes a hierarchical system of control, operating through 7 main vibrational frequencies, what later traditions would call the 7 planetary spheres. Each sphere represented not just a celestial body, but a type of consciousness, a frequency of being, a layer of the prism that surrounds the divine spark within humans. To escape this prison, to achieve gnosis or true knowing, required passing through these spheres, which meant neutralizing the specific archonic influence operating at each level. Sophia, divine wisdom personified as feminine, plays a crucial role in this cosmology. It was her movement outside the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality, that inadvertently led to the creation of the demiurge. Yet she also planted within the material world and within humanity the seeds of awakening. The symbols we're discussing are direct expressions of her redemptive presence in Mate. The early Christian Gnostic Valentinus taught that humans contain 3 elements: body, material, soul, psychic, and spirit, pneumatic. The Archons can influence the material and psychic levels, but cannot touch the pneumatic, the divine spark. The symbols we're exploring operate from this pneumatic level, creating fields of resonance that the Archons cannot penetrate because they lack the divine spark themselves. This isn't abstract theology. It's a precise description of the mechanics of consciousness. When you understand that certain geometric patterns create energetic fields that function as shields or transmitters of frequencies beyond archonic control, you begin to see why these symbols have been systematically removed from public spiritual discourse, relegated to the realm of superstition, or co-opted and distorted. Remember, what makes these symbols powerful isn't belief, it's resonance. They work regardless of whether you intellectually accept the cosmology behind them. Their effectiveness comes from their mathematical precision, their vibrational coherence with aspects of reality that exist beyond the archonic system. What if the world we perceive is not simply what is, but rather a specific bandwidth of reality, a carefully curated slice of infinite possibility? The Gnostics understood that our perceptual apparatus itself has been calibrated to receive only certain frequencies, to process only certain data points, creating what philosopher Henry Bergson would later call the veil of perception. This veil isn't a physical barrier, but a limitation of consciousness, a limitation that can be transcended. The symbols we're discussing don't just represent higher realities, they actually generate fields that help recalibrate our perception, allowing us to perceive beyond the bandwidth controlled by archonic influence. Consider this. What we call normal consciousness is actually a highly filtered state. Our brains process approximately 400 billion bits of information per second. Yet, we're consciously aware of only about 2000 bits. The rest is filtered out. Who or what determines which information reaches our conscious awareness? This is where the concept of archonic influence becomes not just plausible, but necessary to explain the consistency of human perceptual limitations across cultures and throughout history. If this resonates with something deep within you, If you feel a recognition beyond mere intellectual curiosity, take a moment to acknowledge this resonance. The like button isn't just a digital feature. It's a small act of recognition, a tiny rebellion against the forces that would prefer this knowledge remain buried. Each time you consciously engage with this information, you strengthen the field of awareness that makes it accessible to others. The algorithms that determine what information spreads are themselves expressions of archonic influence, designed to suppress certain frequencies of thought while amplifying others. Your engagement helps counteract this digital expression of an ancient system. Like this video if you feel its truth, not as validation for me, but as acknowledgement of what's awakening within you. This simple action helps ensure this knowledge reaches others who are ready to remember. Now, let's examine the first symbol that Archons cannot touch, the Vesica Piscis. This symbol appears when two circles of the same size intersect so that the center of each circle lies on the circumference of the other. The almond-shaped space created in the middle represents a portal, a gateway between dimensions. Why can't Archons interfere with this symbol? Because it mathematically expresses the relationship between unity and duality, between the unmanifest and the manifest. It represents the first movement from oneness into creation, but not the fallen creation of the demiurge. Rather, it represents creation as it exists in its pure form, before distortion. When you meditate on this symbol or place it in your living environment, you're establishing a vibrational field that resonates with pre-demiurgic creation. The Archons, being products of the distorted creation, have no reference point for this frequency. They cannot manipulate what they cannot comprehend or access. Have you noticed how this symbol appears in sacred architecture worldwide? From the Vesica-shaped entrances of Gothic cathedrals to the mandalas surrounding Christ and Buddha in religious art. This wasn't decorative, it was functional, creating spaces where archonic influence was minimized, allowing for clearer connection to higher consciousness. In your daily life, how often do you feel your thoughts aren't entirely your own? How frequently do you find yourself caught in loops of worry, fear, or desire that seem to arise from nowhere and lead nowhere? These are the subtle signatures of archonic influence. Not dramatic possession, but gentle nudging, slight redirection of attention, almost imperceptible emotional manipulation. The second symbol beyond archonic reach is even more powerful, the flower of life. This pattern consists of multiple overlapping circles arranged in perfect six-fold symmetry. It contains every Platonic solid, every fundamental geometric pattern found in physical creation. Yet it exists as potential rather than manifestation, the blueprint rather than the building. What makes this symbol impenetrable to archonic influence is that it contains the mathematical codes of creation before they were distorted. It's like having the original source code of reality. The Archons can manipulate the executed program of physical reality, but they cannot alter the underlying code from which it emerges. When you work with this symbol, whether through meditation, by wearing it, or by placing it in your environment, you're aligning yourself with the original template of creation. You're essentially saying to your own consciousness, calibrate to this, not to the distorted version I've been perceiving. Have you ever experienced sudden clarity after looking at certain geometric patterns? A sense of remembering something you never consciously knew. This is your divine spark, recognizing frequencies it inherently understands. Frequencies that existed before the archonic system was established. Consider how these symbols have been used throughout human history. The flower of life appears in the temple of Osiris at Abydos, Egypt, dating back at least 6,000 years. It's found in ancient synagogues, in Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, in Asiatic temples. This isn't cultural diffusion. It's independent discovery of the same mathematical truth by those who could see beyond the veil. In your own life, where do you feel most authentic? In what moments do you sense yourself operating from a place of true autonomy rather than programmed response? These are the moments when you've temporarily stepped outside archonic influence. The symbols we're discussing can help make these moments more frequent, more sustained, more accessible. What's fascinating is how these symbols work regardless of belief. You don't need to intellectually accept Gnostic cosmology for them to affect your consciousness. Their power lies in their mathematical perfection, their vibrational coherence with aspects of reality that exist beyond the distorted creation. They operate on the level of physics, not faith. The integration of these symbols into your consciousness isn't about escaping the material world. It's about experiencing it from a different level of awareness. The Gnostics weren't advocating rejection of physical reality. They were teaching discernment between the divine spark within creation and the distortions overlaid upon it. When you begin working with these symbols, notice subtle shifts in your perception. Colors might seem more vivid. Synchronicities might increase. Dreams might become more lucid. These aren't random effects. They're signs that your perceptual apparatus is recalibrating to frequencies beyond archonic management. The Vesikapiskis and the Flower of Life aren't just protective symbols. They're technologies of consciousness. They're tools that help restructure your relationship with the reality itself. By resonating with these patterns, you begin to resonate with aspects of creation that remain untouched by distortion. This isn't about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human, experiencing your existence from the perspective of your divine spark rather than from the perspective of the programmed personality that has been shaped by external influences. What's most remarkable about these symbols is that they don't require any external authority or intermediary. You don't need a priest, guru, or teacher to access their power. The relationship is direct between your consciousness and the mathematical perfection they embody. In the silence that follows these revelations, sit with what resonates. The intellectual understanding is just the beginning. The real transformation happens in the quiet recognition that occurs beyond words. The paradox we began with now reveals its deeper truth. What we thought was freedom, our normal perception of reality, was actually a carefully managed bandwidth of experience. And what seemed like esoteric symbolism turns out to be the most practical technology of liberation, a way to expand perception beyond the frequencies controlled by archonic influence. These symbols aren't magical talismans. They're precise mathematical expressions of frequencies that exist beyond the distorted creation. Their power doesn't come from belief or ritual, but from their inherent resonance with aspects of reality that remain untouched by the architects of our perceptual prison. As you move forward from this moment, you carry this knowledge not as a concept, but as a lived possibility. The symbols we've explored are now part of your conscious awareness. Even without physically reproducing them, your recognition of their significance has already begun to shift the field of your perception. The greatest illusion was never that we were being influenced, it was that we had no choice in the matter. These symbols represent choice. They represent the possibility of experiencing reality from a different vantage point, one aligned with the original template of creation rather than its distorted execution. In this moment of recognition, there is profound peace. Not the peace of ignorance, but the peace that comes from remembering what you've always known. That a part of you has never been touched by distortion, has never forgotten its true nature, has never been under archonic control. What single word emerged in your consciousness as you contemplated these symbols? What feeling, insight, or recognition arose? Share that word in the comments below, not just as feedback, but as a beacon for others walking this path of remembrance. Write activated if you felt a resonance with either symbol. This simple act creates a field of recognition that extends beyond digital space, connecting those who are awakening to these frequencies across time and distance.